Hi, everyone. Thanks for waiting. I think most of you have signed on. And as the Swahili would say, Jambo. Welcome to our webinar of the Great Migration. I'm especially happy to see quite a few of previous guests that have joined us on safaris in different places and looking at their upcoming safaris. My name is Mark and one of the founders of Adventure to Africa. Well, without much of ado, let's get going. I'm going to take about half an hour of your time and we'll cover, what is the migration, the route, the life cycle, the pros and cons versus the Serengeti against Kenya, the Masai Mara, accommodation choices, and other considerations you might have. Hopefully we'll cover most of the topics. If you have any questions, as I'm going through it, if you see on the bottom right-hand side, there should be a Q&A box. Just type them in there, I'll get them, and I should be able to answer them towards the end of the conversation, and we'll see where we go with that. If you're also wanting to hear or forward it on to family and friends, we are recording this, so just shoot us an email and we'll be able to send it on to you. Alrighty. What is the migration? Simply said, largest overland migration of animals in the world. Unbelievable spectacle. About 1.5 million wildebeest and about 200,000 zebra. A lot of gazelle thrown in between there. And it covers about a 500-mile annual pattern. Basically, if you want to have a look at the migration, it's one big national park that covers two countries. The Tanzanians call it Serengeti. In Kenya, it's known as the Masai Mara. The Masai Mara itself, up in the top left-hand side over here, pretty small, we'll get to that. And this is the Serengeti down here. So it spreads over a vast distance here. Why are the animals doing this, some of you might ask? No conclusive answer with all the brain boxes that are out there. Some scientists believe that the wildebeest are attracted to high levels of nutrients in the grasses, minerals, So basically, they follow the rains in search of the fresh, nutritious grasses that come through shortly after the rains, or simply instinct. The fossil evidence that there is out there shows that the wildebeest have been roaming these plains in East Africa for millions of years. So no conclusive evidence at all. Whatever the reason, it's still an epic wildlife event. It's quite something. The herd itself is amazing, but along with the herds come the predators that follow and wait along the way. They are undoubtedly the cause of death for many of the animals. Approximately 25,000 wildebeest and 3,000 zebra die each year. They are food for the lions, 3,000 somewhat that live in the Serengeti, along with hyenas and leopards. Cheetahs down in the south. But, that's not accounting for all of the death. A lot of them will die, thirst, hunger, exhaustion on their journey. And the most, one that everybody's aware of, the crocodiles waiting for them on the river crossings. So a lot of folks often ask the question, why are there wildebeest, with the wildebeest come the zebra and the gazelles mingled in the herds? Safety in numbers, that's predominantly it. And also there's no real competition. They're eating the different parts of the grass, so they get on with each other. But mainly safety in numbers. The biggest misconception most folks have is that, they talk about the migration. I want to see the migration. There isn't only one migration. As you see, it isn't quite correct. It happens all year. The overall big route that they take, though, is more or less the same each year, but it's guided more by the rains and the growth of the grass. They do form subherds, and so they will split up and move in different directions. Some of these times they stop and graze in one place for quite a while, but sometimes they'll even backtrack on themselves, so be aware of that. But generally, most animals on the north from July to October, and then on the south, July through March, April, give or take. So if you're trying to plan your trip to match the herd and whatnot else, plan in advance and just, you can work with that. Don't just expect to go to a specific resort and expect to see the herd. Pay attention to the cycle. December through to March, baby time, southern plains. The picture on the upper right shows a typical scenery of the southern Serengeti. Its sheer vastness is boggling. It is yeah, 500,000 wildebeest spread out, I mean, just they're being born between January and March. That's 8,000 a day. People say, how come so much in one day? Well, you get around trying to coincide all the births at once so that the predators can only eat so much at one go. Preservation in numbers again. The season is normally known as the calving season. And Ndutu area is probably one of the best game viewing areas, and it's excellent at this time of the year. It's a lot of cheetah sightings because they like the open plains, but all the other predators are there, so the sightings are good. As you know, the young ones make an easy meal, unfortunately. During this time of the year, the herd is fairly spread out, resting after giving birth and chewing on the fresh grass that's in and around there, and high and rich in calcium and phosphorus. So they spread out. Towards the end of March, though, the migration is probably the most impressive, with huge numbers spread out across the plains. I mean, I can't explain it in words. Here you can get a better view and the comprehension of the number of animals, as opposed to when you see them in amongst the rolling hills and the trees. Spectacular. April and May, known as the rutting season. Males compete and fight. Yeah, sorry, that's us, for the right to mate with the females. This coincides with the beginning of the herd's movement northwest towards Grumeti. The southern plains are being grazed out and they're starting to head up on the northwest. The long rains, also start April and run through May and account for regular downpours. It's a beautiful time of the year, but it's also a good chance of getting stuck. And for that very reason, it's often termed as the off season. So just be aware of that. June and July, the migration gathers momentum and starts heading towards the western corridor of the Serengeti. This is the first time the calves actually run into a serious barrier in terms of the Grumeti River. Barrier, not only the river being there, but many, many hungry crocodiles that have been waiting for months are ready for a meal. This is an area of riverine forest and many buffalo and elephant in the area as well. Great part of the country. In July, the north is fairly green, and especially on the western side, and this is part of the draw, but elsewhere it's starting to get dry and dusty. So keep that in mind. Game viewing in the central Serengeti is excellent with good cat action around the water sources. It's really good. The central Serengeti is superb game viewing all year round. So keep that in mind. Even if the migration is there, really good because it has the permanent water. In July, the herd can be really spread out over a vast distance. When we visited, we actually found animals way down in the south, and some of them were already up in the north. So it gives you an idea of how far these guys can be spread out. The camps, they gather information from every source they can, and a lot of times it's from the pilots flying guests into camp. So they keep themselves updated with the movements because the herds move. If the herds are moved away from you, you usually take a picnic basket and head out for the day. Or you can go just to what we call a kopi, which is a rock outcropping, and look for some of the permanent game that's in the area. For example, there are many tree climbing lion and leopards in the area. The lions like to take a nap in the tree just to get a breeze and away from the bugs. As you see there in the picture, that's quite a sight. Beautiful. By now, the dry season in Serengeti well underway. So now the herds have moved further north, and many of them are getting ready to cross into the Kenya's Masai Mara. This involves another crossing, the Mara River. This is where the most famous documentaries have been made, and with the wildebeest and zebra being snatched by the hungry crocs. The wildebeest are hungry and want to get across to the Masai Mara where the grass is green, but they're hesitating, as you can imagine, and they start to congregate. And as they congregate, the masses start building behind them and are getting forced So the front ones are getting forced to make a choice to cross. So they're no longer hesitating too much. When the crossing starts, the noise is unbelievable, loud. The wildebeest snort and carry on, and there's a lot of stomping. They do congregate, or they may congregate for a couple of days before actually getting there, though. And so as the herds swell, the numbers before they cross, again, safety in numbers. Well, relative, I guess. They do get snatched. Crossings can happen at any time. So people say to you, oh, it happens at this time. No, it happens at any time. It's literally a flip of the switch. One of them decides and off it goes. And it's not just one big event. There's several crossings. Again, safety in numbers. Everybody wants to see the crossing. So, on the downside, there's a lot of vehicles there. And it's the busiest place of the year for the migration. Once they've made it across the river, then they have to come back. Wildebeest are not known to be the brightest of animals, and they'll make that crossing several times. Yeah, you heard me, several times. We definitely recommend to see other places, other in and around there. Definitely some places that are not as crowded as the migration. It is a spectacular sight, but keep in mind it is busy. October is the height of the dry season, and the search for food and water is continuous. In a dry year, it's the north is severe, but normally it's short-lived, and the short rains will arrive in November. In November, dramatic thunderclouds. I mean, beautiful. They build up, moving, and there's downpours. The herds themselves, they start to move south again, this time on the eastern side of the Serengeti. They'll follow wherever the rains just happened, and the change is dramatic. Wherever the rain's been, it's dramatic afterwards. And you'll literally see herds arriving overnight. It's beautiful. But the ultimate destination is the southern plains, where it'll provide ideal short grass for the pregnant females again. Viewing the migration, Serengeti versus the Masai Mara. I'm going to run through, a couple of the comparisons we have here, and then I'll give you some more details. So forgive me, I might, double up on some of the information, but I think it's best you can see the comparisons. Let's start with the Serengeti itself. Much bigger, as I mentioned before. You're able to see 3 cycles really, the calving, the rutting, and the crossings. So a good option. You got a lot of more varied accommodation, so mobile camps, things like that. It combines well with other parks in and around Tanzania. You've got the Tarangire, you've got Ngorongoro Crater, you've got Zanzibar. Downside, flights can take a little longer from Arusha. It's a bigger part of the world. More exclusive experiences. When I say exclusive, I'm talking about that you have the vehicle to yourself. You don't have to rely on anybody else. The Serengeti, varied habitat. Just being so large, it covers vast different areas. River runs, savannas, you name it. It covers a huge area. You're able to drive further. You see different things. You can drive further to search for the herds. You'll cover so many different areas. But I said drive. You can fly at them camp to camp, do whatever you want. The only thing is the northern Serengeti, you are going to have to fly to, just essentially because it's so far north. One thing though, leopard sightings, as you see there, they are much better due to more trees. Simple as that. Private vehicle again. So, that's the upside of the Serengeti. The Masai Mara, you have more private concessions that offer different activities. I'll get into that a little bit later. Maybe the camps are slightly less costly. You have more competition, creates, cheaper pricing. More options for children on the concessions. to those that want to travel as a family. Downside, you have more vehicles on the Kenyan side, just due to access and how people go about it. It's the minivan story. Masai Mara's resort style hotels are exceptionally busy. So if you are planning on doing a resort style, keep that in mind. Varied landscapes, tribes in the area. We've listed just one tribe here. There's the Samburu tribe, along with Masai. One downside with these camps, the only accessibility is flying into their camps. So keep that in mind. You do have chance for rhino sightings adjacent to the Masai Mara. Flights from Nairobi are less costly into the Masai Mara. So those are just brief comparisons, just to give you an idea. Like I said, I'm going to probably repeat myself here, but I want to give you some more facts, just to give you an idea of the different size. The Serengeti itself is 12,000 square miles. Yep, 12,000. The Masai Mara being only 600 square miles. That gives you an indication of the size. Vastly different. Activities in the national parks are limited in terms of not walking, no night drives, things like that. So some of the other parks have them, but not these parks. The surrounds of the Masai Mara being the private concessions. Private concessions are exactly that. They're just private areas with only people allowed on the property that are in the lodge. So hence you're allowed to do the different walks, the night drives, which adds a different dynamic to it. In the private concession, you'll find much less people, and you'll be, just allowed to do different things. You don't have a fence between these concessions and the national park. So you can actually still access the national park from the concession, but the people in the park cannot access your concession. One thing to be aware of, though, is don't be surprised if you run into livestock. When I mean livestock, I'm talking cows. Yes, you heard me right. They are herders that are moving cows through in amongst all the lines. So don't be surprised if you suddenly see some cows and a herder in amongst it. It is carefully managed and usually does not impact on your safari. It's actually quite a unique experience. So just something to be aware of. But still, most people are still surprised to see it because they weren't expecting it. One thing you must keep in mind, though, you can't access the Serengeti or the Masai Mara from one or the other. So what I'm saying is you can't drive from Masai Mara into the Serengeti and or vice versa. But you can access them by flight. So if you're wanting to see both countries and wanted to tie the two together, I would tend to do the southern Serengeti with and or the Ngorongoro crater tied in with the Masai Mara. That would give you a good change in scenery and still be able to see both countries. I suppose the long and the short of it, basically the one is not better than the other, and both offer amazing migration safari destination as well as non-migration. So, don't rule out either. The pros and cons on both areas, it just depends on you, the person, and what you're wanting to get out of your safari, I suppose. But we can guide you with that. Regards to accommodation, normally we get a lot of questions about this. And yes, the guys tend to ask a lot of questions about this too. There are many different styles of accommodation available. They range from fairly large hotels, when I say large, 65 rooms, to safari camps, which are a handful of units. Your camp experience depends on what you choose. In this case, smaller is better. The wildlife is not scared away because you're low impact. I mean, makes sense really. Totally to the contrary on the bigger hotel styles with all the people and the large compounds. So, keep in mind though that the camps with a few units normally sell out much faster, and booking a year out is pretty recommended because it does sell out. So basically there are a lot of options to choose from. Canvas, safari tent, or building style, and a variety of budgets. Covers a whole lot. The Sopa Lodge you see here on the top left-hand side as a standard hotel room that you would have in any city, really. Kati Kati, top right, is an economical but comfortable safari tent with only 12 units. Furnishings are sparse, but all you'd need. You're on safari. You don't need all the plushness. Pioneer Camp, a canvas tent, but with elaborate furnishings, as you can see there. Kleins on your bottom right there used to be an old farmhouse, so it has a lot of history. So as you can see, there are a lot of options out there, and we can work with people to find what you want. There's so many different things to choose from. All these camps, I should say, though, are permanent camps. They're not mobile camps. So exactly, moving on to the mobile camps, now you're probably wondering, what is a mobile camp? What makes it mobile? Well, these camps move with the migration in the Serengeti. Yes, you heard right. They actually move with the migration. They'll be packed up every 2 months or so and keep pace with the migration itself, or actually leapfrog ahead of it. So quite a feat. Because of this, though, everything that is packed up is lightweight. And then when they leave there, all that's left behind is a patch of grass. So yeah, that's pretty impressive. Staying in a mobile camp is a unique way of being right in the vicinity of the herd. It is phenomenal. Digressing a little bit, yeah, you might have also heard of safari showers. Even the quite luxurious camps that have butlers provide these types of showers. What it means, though, is that you let them know in advance when you'd like to take a shower. So you're pretty much locked into your time. And they'll bring hot water to your room and put in a bucket right outside your bathroom, with the shower head being inside your tent. What I'll get onto, I'll show you now what I'm talking about. This one over here is your shower. So they'll fill that, whoopsie daisy, I do apologize. They do get onto that, and they fill that up with water, and away you go. The outside tank that you have there on the bottom left-hand side, you see that brown tank. That is your water that would normally come to your sink and to your toilet. And it's just regular water that you'd use during the day. And that's tepid water that is basically day temperature. So you have all the things that you require. Remember that this is going to be out there in the wilderness, and it's remote. So if you'd like to have air conditioning and you want a proper standard bathroom, this is not going to be for you. And a hotel style is what I would recommend, and where you should go. But remember, your safari experience is going to suffer in its authenticity on that. That's the only downside of wanting the standard features. There's nothing like hearing a hyena prowl around your tent, or a lion roaring in the nearby. Some of you are looking at me going, really? And safety? Those who are worried about safety, remember, as long as you close the zipper of your tent, you keep your tent closed, you're perfectly fine inside. There's no dramas with that. And people say, walking to and from camp. Well, after dark, the guides will come and get you from your tent or walk you back to your tent. So don't worry about that. So they will make sure that you're not going to walk into anything or get any surprises by some lion, buffalo, or elephant that are around. So you'll be perfectly safe. One of the other considerations. Sure. We try and keep it concise on this one because there's so much. Besides the time of the year to match with what you are trying to look for in your experience, you might want to consider, easy combinations with the migration. I touched briefly on it earlier. In Tanzania, you've got the Ngorongoro crater. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, boasts a Big Five, a territory that includes rhino, which you won't find in the Serengeti. The Tarangire National Park, very underrated, is known for its large buffalo herds and elephant as well. it's a quiet park. When I say quiet, I mean less tourists. So for me, I enjoyed it very much. Zanzibar, easy to tie in. It's an epic beach getaway at the end of your safari. You know, golden beaches, turquoise waters. Direct flights from, there's a direct flights from Serengeti straight into Entebbe in Uganda, and or Kigali in Rwanda for those of you who want to do guerrilla trekking. There's quite a lot of interest on that, so keep that in mind, that you can bounce straight out of the Serengeti straight into those locations. More energetic of us, Kilimanjaro is a good option to tie in there as well. One thing to keep in mind, though, a lot of folks ask the question, flight connections to tie in Serengeti with South Africa and Botswana. Really difficult, really expensive. So, keep that in mind. Kenya. You can see the black and white rhino in a reserve there called Olpayete. I do apologize if some of you know it by a different name. And you have the Masai and the Samburu tribal experiences. We definitely do not recommend the beach visit in Kenya, just purely for safety reasons, but it's an easy flight to Zanzibar. So you can tie that in there. The picture there that we stuck in for you to have a look at is a typical picture that you'll have in an evening. This particular one was on the mobile safari, and it was a beautiful way. Just another thing that we brought up here, as you can see the Masai youngsters, they're around there. You bump into them all over. One thing that I should mention, considering international accessibility. For Kenya, you've got a direct flight into Nairobi out of New York, and straight into your camp, which will fly you straight out of Nairobi, straight into your camp. So that's fairly good access. Tanzania, you'd fly into Kilimanjaro, and you'd connect through some airport in Europe or the Middle East, depending on which airline you prefer. Both accessible though, so I wouldn't stress about it. Types of safaris, differ quite considerably from the aspect of, you fly into the safari camp in Kenya and join a safari vehicle there shared with other guests in the lodge. This would be an open vehicle. The picture on the left is what I mean by an open vehicle. That's pretty much the standard one that you'd get if you're going to be sharing it with other guests. In Tanzania, most people plan a longer journey through northern Tanzania, visiting several parks. This you can do by flying into the park or by vehicle. When I say by vehicle, your guide picks you up in Arusha and drives you on to your safari camps. He will be with you through the entirety of your southern, stay if you want. He will take you through the southern Serengeti. If you're going to tie in the northern Serengeti, however, you will fly from there to the north. As I said before, it's just too far to drive. Having your own vehicle and guide adds a whole new dimension to it, and makes you extremely independent. You can stop, look, whatever you want, move on. There's no mileage limit on these vehicles, and you can go do whatever. You'll search for the animal as long as you want, go as far as you want. Probably repeating myself there. It's a really good option if there's 4 of you. Even for 2, the price comes out pretty much the same price-wise. For those driving itineraries, though, you had a vehicle that we would determine as closed in, but as a roof top pop tent. Take a look at the upper right-hand side. It'll explain more. So when you're on the road and it's dusty and you'd like to have some air conditioning, you can close it up and cool down and off you go. These vehicles with a pop-up roof allow you to stand up in the middle of the vehicle, and you've got a good vantage point. It really adds a different dimension to it. It's good for taking pictures. You can see a long way. It adds a different dimension. There will be no other people in the vehicle with you other than friends or family, how you've planned it. It'll just be you and yourself and your friends. If you fly into the camp, so then you're sharing a vehicle again. Again, open-sided vehicle. You do have the option of hiring a private vehicle just for yourself, but it is expensive. I will warn you in advance, it is expensive. Sure. It's also beautiful to see the Serengeti and the Masai Mara from above. And you've probably heard about the hot air balloons. It's an amazing experience, so keep that in mind. A little bit of info on the picture on the right-hand side there. Yep, that was us, closed-in vehicle and all. We got properly stuck towards the end of the rainy season. Our guard called in another vehicle by radio, and they pulled us out. Wasn't a big deal, but if you're planning during that time of the year, just remember, if you're going to get stuck more often than not, you sacrifice a bit of game viewing. We had a great experience, though. If you'd like to meet the Masai warriors, this can be done both Kenya and Tanzania. So bear that in mind. You can either visit a camp that offers that experience, or we can incorporate that, with your travel as you're going through with your private safari vehicle. You can visit one of their kraals or Masai homestead. That's pretty much it for us right now. Let me see. I'd like to get through to some of your questions that you guys have, and we can. No, I don't have any questions from anybody. My goodness. Well, folks, thank you so much for your time. I'll wait a half a minute or so and see if anybody else has got anything. But if not, thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate it. If you have any questions that you think of or you'd like more info, just shoot us an email at info@adventure2africa. We really appreciate it. Maria, we can send this along to you, no problem at all. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Folks, as the Swahili would say, asante sana, thank you very much, and take care of yourselves. Guys, take care, and we'll keep you abreast of what's happening. Alrighty.